now maybe let's quickly go through an alternative you can use to install. And that alternative, which you can use for tons of software, Python, R, lots of bioinformatics software, and also now a lot of like just general software, is Conda. Other one, have you used Conda before?
Yes, I use it almost every day.
Me too. I also use it a lot. Maybe some of you have used Conda. Maybe some don't. But it's a useful tool to know about. So the command is just Conda. It doesn't matter if it's Anaconda or Miniconda, the command to install and create environment and install software is Conda. So we can run Conda. Ha! Actually, I did not expect this to work. This might, I'm not sure, maybe this is because I have something up. Oh, I hope this, I did not break something. And like, does it work for you, Radovan, if you write Conda just on Saga without logging in, without loading anything? Because I have the feeling this might be that I forgot to clear my bash RC.
Testing. Nope. It doesn't work
for you?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Because I have this in my bash RC, which is not great.
And before you just quickly remove it, please explain what happened here and where does it come from? Maybe you will come back to it because I think everybody will hit this sooner or later.
Okay. What's happening here? Conda is, like many software, should not immediately be available, or like is not available to everyone. You have to load this module. The module is called Anaconda 3. We will load it in a minute. And then you can use Conda. And what you usually do is if you install Conda on your local machine, you run Conda init bash, for example, to initialize your software, like your tech terminal and your bash to be able to use Conda like day to day. And that does it by putting something into the .bash rc, which is your configuration script for your terminal, the bash. And that points to this. And suddenly I can run Conda even though the module is not loaded. And that basically breaks the module system a bit and can lead to weird errors if you down the line. So we don't advise, but I was experimenting with something a few days ago, and then that's why I did it. And I forgot to remove it. Okay, so I now deleted these lines from my bash RC. They're at the bottom and they're marked. And now I can source it again. And now I hope with Conda. Yeah, it still runs. Oh, okay, then but what you should do is you load Conda and you look for it. It's like which ones are available currently. Okay, there's two. Anaconda and Miniconda. Anaconda comes with some pre-installed software in the base environment. Miniconda doesn't have that. If you want to create your own, which we'll do here, I would advise to use Miniconda. But that's at least my personal opinion. But what do you think?
Yeah, I personally agree. So let's just again explain what is the difference between Anaconda and Miniconda. We will see that in both we have a base environment. At least in the Anaconda we have a base environment, which is the environment that comes with Anaconda, and it contains a lot of packages. I don't know, dozens, hundreds. And in the Miniconda we come with a very minimal environment. There is almost nothing there, only the essentials. And there we need to decide, we need to install all the dependencies that we need explicitly. Personally, I prefer that because I want to have control over which dependencies I need. And I want to do that anyway, because for each project I want to have this documented. So I find Miniconda better for me in the long run. But Anaconda is easier to get started because everything is already there.
Yeah, so I think Anaconda has an advantage if you use the base, you just Conda activate, and now you will run into something. If you if you just integrate the base with Conda, under Conda you have a lot of like NumPy and SciPy and tons of Python packages and some other packages installed. And if this is enough for you, this is great, because then you don't have to install anything by hand. But if you run to installation, you can't change the base because it's in a globally accessible path. So no user is allowed to change something, to install something, and then you have to create your own, and then you have to anyway, create your own, install your own packages. So try out Conda if you want, see if maybe there's everything you need, but otherwise use Miniconda. That's at least my. But both use Conda, both behave otherwise the same. Okay. So I now try to Conda activate to see what actually is it. If there's a base, you can also Conda with environments and list. I can see what Conda environments I already have. There's no, there's a base. And there's also one here. So and we can activate.
Can I stop you there, because you did Conda activate, but then you got this error message that
I want to like Conda activate base now and see what happens. Okay, and now like base is usually what we don't like. I don't use base a lot, basically at all, private, like normal in my day-to-day work. But Conda activates base, activates this base environment. In Conda, there's a lot of stuff. And if I do that, suddenly I get this command not found error. Your shell is not properly configured to use Conda activate. And then here, to initialize, run Conda init and then bash in this case. And that's what I did before. And this can work on our cluster, but it also doesn't work in some cases. So it's a bit of a tricky command to run Conda init bash. What we instead would advise, and someone raised their hand. Okay. Okay. We can talk about Mamba later, but now Mamba and Conda are Mamba is a drop-in replacement for Conda, which is I prefer because it's a bit faster. But, the other one, can you help me now? I mentioned that Conda init has its problems, especially if you switch, for example, from Miniconda or Anaconda to either another version or from one to the other, because suddenly you have like hard-coded links, like what you saw. What should we do instead?
Yeah, so if I read this error message, it tells me that I should do Conda init, and I don't advise not to do that, because if we do that, it will again modify your .-rc. It will work, but it might create some interesting effects later. We have somewhere in the documentation a command source eb something. Maybe we can show how to find it, because that's the better way to. It will have the same effect as Conda init, but it will not modify my .-rc. Where do we have that?
Yeah.
Do we not have that?
Nope, not at the moment. Because I forgot yesterday to add this.
Okay.
Can you figure it out while I talk about
yes.
what to use?
Yep, looking.
Okay, so the idea of Conda is, just a general side note, you see that our documentation is not perfect. There's stuff we want to add. Sometimes we know about that we have to change something. Sometimes we realize it by reading it ourselves or looking something up. So our documentation will always be in work in progress. And if something like this happens, we try to fix it as soon as possible. Sometimes we forget about it. Sometimes we just write it down, but we don't do the work. This happens. But if you see that something is broken in the documentation, please write or tell us about it.
I place it into our collaborative document, how to do Conda init.
So we will add this to the documentation. Yeah. So because to activate or to make it, instead of doing Conda init, we advise to do, I copied this now, source, and then eb root mini conda just tells basically it's just like a variable set that points to the mini conda installation, and then bin and activate. And if you do that, now we're suddenly in the base. But now I can also, now I'm in the base, so it worked. Activate. Okay. So the error message is gone because we activated Conda. Now it works as intended, but without the side effects of having it in the bash RC, which can lead to problems at some point. We have had problems. We have tickets about this. Okay. But now quickly, with Conda we can install software. And in theory, this is just Conda install and then something like, let's say, IPython, which is a nice Python. It's like Python command line, but a bit nicer. Or NumPy or something. I can do this now, but where will I install it to? Where will it in the end up? What do you say, Alon?
Yeah, if you now hit enter, which you shouldn't, it would install it into base. And it was a really good advice of yours that we should not modify the base environment. And we cannot.
Yeah, I think if I will run this, it will just fail.
But this is also, let's try it out, but also on your own computer, on your own laptop. I also advise you to never modify the base environment. Because otherwise, again, 6 months later, you want to know what are the dependencies of my project. And then if you installed everything into base, you have no idea. Instead, we will always create a new environment for each project, and we will install into that environment, because then we know what we did, it's documented, and if we mess up, we just delete that environment. Never install into base.
Yeah, so maybe we should go one step back and say that Conda is not this. You can also install software with it, but it's not the same as EasyBuild. Conda can do. You can install software with it, like you see now. So, sorry. Now I told it to like install, and it will install into this. And then it will also update and download some packages, and here it tells me everything it will do. And it will download 7.6 megabytes, and these packages will be installed. And a few will be updated. So in this way, it behaves quite similar to EasyBuild. Like you install software with it, but it doesn't create a module file in the end. We will see how this works instead. But what also Conda is also comes from the Python and like from Python as originally is it's also a nice way of separating installations from each other. You can create environments, and each environment is different to the other. You can have a certain set of Python packages, like for example, in this case, you can have a certain NumPy installation 2.7, and if you're another project, you need 2.9. You can create another environment where you have a different Python version, different NumPy version, whatever you want. And they are completely separate from each other. You can load one or the other. Yeah. I can now try to see what happens if I just run that, but it should download all the files. It will cache them somewhere. It will also be an interesting experience now if we run into an error. Yeah, so it extracted all of them, and then it gives me an error. Environment not writable errors. The current user doesn't have write permissions to the target environment because this is a global installation. And we can't let everyone install stuff into the global and change stuff there. So if you want to install, you have to create your own environment to install it in. That's actually quite simple. It's just conda create, you create a new environment. And then there's two ways. You can either give it a name or a path. So you can either use name and then -n or minus name. And then, for example, I don't know, bio, or let's say we want to have some certain NumPy version that we can use it NumPy. But where will this end up, other one? Not sure if you followed or if you're busy on the chat.
Yeah, I was answering questions, but let me catch up quickly. So the question was, we are
What happens
creating
if
an
I use
environment.
name?
Yeah, it will end up somewhere in my home folder. So there is a dot, maybe cache or conda dot. So that's also something I personally don't use because I want to decide where the environment should be.
Yeah. And again, especially Conda is really like quickly fills up your file number of file quota, and suddenly you install one Conda environment and suddenly you have 100,000 files and everything breaks. Here on this page, I actually linked the error somewhere here. The disk quota exceeded error message, you will see. And then you have to basically delete either the .conda folder or run conda clean. It's described here. So if you run into that and you have conda installations before, do that. So what, instead of using name, which you can use on your home PC, like on my private PC, I often use in like certain paths, like for a project, I have like in that project where I work, I have a conda environment sometimes, but depends. What instead I would use prefix or -p. It's also described here. Install packages. Yeah, creating an environment here. And then similar to earlier, I would give it like my cluster objects and M9987, okay, JD, and then give it like some descriptive name. You can just call it Conda, but because it's like one environment, I would name it after what you want to do with it. And then, for example, if you want to like use it for, I don't know, calculations, use it. I just give it a name called now. Doesn't matter. Whatever makes most sense for you. And I could just like create this now, but then it's an empty environment. But usually you already know what you want to install, so you can already write those names, like packages you want to install. If it's Python packages, you can already write them here, like IPython, for example, like NumPy, because I know I will want to use them. And this is like, we want to keep it short, so this is all I do now. And then I can issue the command, and then it will again go through the whole, it will collect like download, like a list of which packages are available, which NumPy versions are there, what do they depend on. The solving means like, how can I pit like the newest NumPy version and the newest Python versions together? What makes sense with all the other like requirements that I have here? And yeah, this is now all that will be installed and all the dependencies of that. And if I issue this now, it will download some files and run them, like install them, and then it won't take too long, and it will have an environment. Okay. Yeah, this went reasonably fast. Also does some checking. Yeah, you can also specify, like if you want a certain Python version, you can specify this here. You can say Python 3.8, for example, if you have something which you know runs, or you want to repeatedly run like on Python 3.8, because this is when you, for example, wrote the paper and tested it, and you want to rerun calculations, you can write Python 3.8 and it will also work. And it will example, because now I can check. I now got Python version build. I actually can't find the Python. Was it Python? Here I have Python 3.11 now. Because it's the newest version. Okay. So Conda, there's a lot of commands, a lot of stuff you can do, but creating an environment in your project and already specifying what packages to install is like the easiest way of doing it. And then if you later realize that you want to install extra packages, you can do that as well, of course. Now we just have to basically like see how it actually works. And if you look in the documentation, you see there's a lot of like other stuff you can do. Like for example, you can, once you have like your Python, not necessarily Python, your environment is like all the for your project established, you can then later save that in a file, and you can create that. Then recreate a new environment with the exact same packages. And this is all very nice to have. You can share it easily, like with a colleague just here. This is the environment file if you send it. Is it stuck now?
Yeah, it looks busy.
Also it shouldn't take so long. Yeah. Yeah, so you can install and create from like an environment file which contains everything that's installed in your. And it's very nice to have that in like together with, for example, your analysis, your workflow, that you know, okay, this is what I used, and then you can easily recreate a new environment from that. And while we're waiting, we can also talk about pip in this context, because Conda can be used to install a lot of software which is not Python. You can install R, you can install Julia, you can install bioinformatics software a lot with Conda. And usually just have to like look for something like, for example, I don't know, bowtie is, for example, maybe I should have wrote something else. You can look for bioinformatics software, for example, in this case. Maybe I should have added a version. Otherwise, I actually get real bow ties. And I think they describe how to do that with Conda. So you will find now that Conda is quite often used. Let's see if they mention that. Oh, they don't, unfortunately. Yeah, Conda install bowtie. Sometimes they mention BioConda, and BioConda is not something separate of Conda, but it's just a different repository with its own set of software, and you can combine that. And it's called a channel. So it's BioConda is just a channel which enables you to install more software. Sure, what is.
And what is a channel for Conda? What are different channels?
A channel is just a list of software that can be installed. And you can easily, if you, let's say, for example, now the installation worked, in the end, how to activate it, because I'm still in base, as you can see here. So if I would now, for example, want to use the Python I've just installed, I can actually try that. Like the switch, I can see that the Python is, and I see it's in the global installation. So I have to first activate my environment. I can do this here with the commands written here. Conda, activate. And now it will print like this, which is a bit long for my screen now. But if I now do which Python I'm actually using, I should see that it's a Python which is installed in this environment. So now I'm using actually the software I just installed. And if you, for example, now realize, okay, we forgot to install something like bowtie, I can just run Conda install bowtie. But you have to be a bit careful if you do it like this. If you just do Conda install and don't specify where to install it to, it will install it in the active one. So now in this one. But if I did it before in the base, it will try to install in the base and it will get an error. So you can just activate it, or you say -p and then give it the path you just used for activating, and it will install in that one. In this case, it doesn't matter. Let's see if this works. Okay. Maybe this is now like a nice segue to BioConda. It actually worked. Yeah, it uses BioConda already because I think I've configured it in that way. But if that wouldn't work, because if it complains that it can't find the software, you can also You can also with -c, you can give it a new channel and then just say BioConda, and then it will use BioConda as an additional channel, so additional list of software. But if I will do that, I mean, it's a small file, so it doesn't take long, and then it will. Many installations actually tell you that Conda install -c BioConda and then the actual name, bowtie. Or in my case, actually bowtie 1. No, it doesn't matter. Oh, that went quite fast. Now I have bowtie available. Yeah. It works. This is a help text. Oh, that's actually a long help text. So Conda is easy to use, I think. And it enables you to separate different installations of softwares and different projects. Okay. Do you think is there something else we should mention in the context of Conda?
I mean, there is a question about notebook, Jupyter Notebook, which is a little bit in the context of Conda. So the use case is the Jupyter Notebook is on a project space, and people in the same project, they collaborate on it, so they want to both use it. And then how can we make that happen? So there I would also set up a Conda environment for project. You can install Jupyter Notebook or anything else that you need. And
well, we don't have to install it, but we can show it. So first, I'm still in this, so I can get out of it by Conda deactivate. Yeah. Wait, some can't type. And now we can basically show how to do that. Conda create and then -p, and then something similar, like you would put it in your project. And then let's call it, what should we call it? Notebook. I don't know. And then we can specify what we want to install. And we can, for example, say Jupyter. And for example, SciPy or something.
Yeah, that's a good example. SciPy, yes.
Okay. And can I just run it now? But what my question is now is regards to Jupyter notebooks. I mean, they're often interactively, so you have a graphical user interface. How to do that on our cluster?
Yeah, and there are different ways of doing it, and maybe let's mention the different ways. One way would be to start the notebook on the cluster, but then you need to export the graphics. So the graphics is then traveling through the network. It can be sometimes slow. It can also put a bit of a load on the login node. Alternative, maybe slightly better, is I can run the notebook on my computer in my browser, but it can connect to a notebook server that is running on the cluster. I don't think we have good documentation how to set this up, but it's possible.
No, but it's good. Yeah.
Option 3, and I just want to mention that this exists because it's a very nice service. So there is the NIRT toolkit